beaming across the eastern townships from the heart of Brome-Missisquoi. This is 99.1 CITI.
Hello and welcome to The Alternatives. You have choices. I'm your host, Ilia Kavoukias, and this is a show about alternative medicine, alternative ways of being, of dealing with stress, and it's brought to you by the Sunshinecenter in Sutton. The show is about interviewing local therapists in the eastern townships and bringing to you all the information that they have spent many years studying and accumulating and very passionate about. So today, for the second time, I have my guest, Anne Vastel. Hello, Anne.
Hi.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Thank you. It was a great first show, so I said, let's do another one. And we were talking about herbalism, herbology, and how herbs can help you mainly as a preventative way of dealing with life. But, if ever it does happen that you're in something, if you're dealing with something, that herbology and herbs can help you regain some health as well. Today, I'd like to be more specific. I'd like to talk about something that we all have been experiencing lately, which the over-drinking, overeating, over-partying, things that happen in the holidays. We all know what I mean. It's very few people that can actually get away for the holidays and do nothing. I'm very envious of those people, but that's not me, and I'm sure it's not the case with a lot of people. And overspending. Let's not forget that overspending part. Where January we're dealing with our credit card bills and our statements and lack of funds in the bank. So I was caught with a good cold, actually, just over the holidays. I was fighting it, and then between Christmas and New Year's, had a little stressful situation, and I had my immune system was shot. It was just banged down, and it got the best of me. And then my husband got sick, and a cold for a man is like the end of the world, as you know. I'm sure you've experienced. So let's talk today about colds and flus and how herbology can help cold and flu. And you've got such a wealth of knowledge of plants and what we can do. So what medicinal plants could help with colds and flus?
Well, what's interesting is in a cold, well, there's a difference between a cold and a flu. I'll start from there. The cold, there's usually no fever, and it lasts less long. And it's not the same virus, so it's treated with the same plants because plants don't make a difference between viruses. They're just antiviral, but it doesn't have the same effect on the body. Whereas the flu, there will be fever and more aches and pains, and it lasts longer. And so sometimes colds, people don't do anything about it. It goes away by itself. It's the typical runny nose that kids have all year long if they're in daycare, and then it goes away. But what's interesting for the cold would be plants that are antiviral. So for the flu, it would be plants that are antiviral. So they're going to actually make it harder for the virus to go into a cell and use the cell as a vessel to reproduce and then invade the whole body. So the plants are going to stop the virus from getting into the cell. And plants that do that are like elder. I don't know if you know elder. It's a little shrub that grows all around the area. It's in ditches, around
probably
train
something
tracks.
I take out of my garden when I don't.
No, it's maybe shrub is not the right word. It's plus comme un arbuste.
Okay, a little
mini tree.
Yeah, a shrub.
Ouais,
yeah,
a
shrub.
Anyways,
yeah.
And it makes it grows like a meter and a half tall, 5 feet
or a
tall.
Bush.
C'est ça, more like a bush. And it makes clusters of white flowers, and that flower end of June, and it's the flower we use flowers we use. So if you see one next summer, it's better to be helped to make sure that you have the right one, because there's another one that looks like it that doesn't do the same thing and can be toxic. So it's always best when you want to harvest your own plants to be sure you have the right plant before you do. Okay. But the elderflowers are antiviral, and the elderberries also. There are a lot of studies, more studies on the berries and how they stop the viruses from invading the body. And you can use it as a tea. For the flowers, it's a very good tasting tea, or as a tincture where the flowers are extracted in alcohol. So the elderflowers are going to be interesting to stop the virus from invading your body. And also they'll work on the fever. So by helping the fever naturally go away. It's not like a Tylenol or Tempra that's going to stop the fever process, because we want that fever to be there to help the body get rid of the infection, because by having a higher temperature, then the virus or the bacteria won't be able to live and reproduce. So the plants that help with fever are called diaphoretics, and they're plants that will bring sudation and will open pores of the skin so that the fever can run its course naturally without keeping going high, or with lasting not as long. So the elder will help on both sides of that infection.
Very
and
interesting.
Usually we mix up plants when we deal with infection or an acute situation, because they tend to have a nice synergy, and also because other plants are going to work on different things. And there's another wild plant that goes around here that's called boneset. It's a very interesting looking plant, because the leaf seems to be perforated by the stem. So it's like if the stem goes through the leaf, but it's actually two leaves that joint themselves up so tightly that it looks like the stem is going through. And they make little bundles of white flowers also in ditches. And again, it's the flowering tops that we harvest. And that one is interesting because it's an antiviral also. It'll help the fever also, but it's specifically interesting for when you have pain all over the body with fever, like it's like your muscles or bones are painful and everything is painful.
So I'm just curious. Let me just tell the listeners listening to CIDI 99.1 FM, The Alternatives, You Have Choices. Your host, Ilia Kavukis, with my guest today, Anne Vestel. We're talking about herbalism. And we're talking about the difference between flus and colds. And you were saying colds, often can go away on their own. It's a bit of a runny nose. So what happens... what bridges it to become a flu and have a fever? And what can we do to prevent that?
It's not the same virus. So a cold is not going to become a flu. Either you catch a cold or you catch a flu, because they're different viruses. But you could catch probably both at the same... Let's say you have, like myself, I have a daughter and that's 4-year-old. So she brings all these different germs home. So I could be in contact with both at the same time and then have a cold, and then it looks like it became a flu, but it's not the same virus. So it's not going to switch one from the other. What happens is when you have a cold or a flu, there's inflammation in the respiratory system that makes the runny nose and blocked nose and mucus all over the place, and that creates porosity in the mucous membrane, and bacteria that live there are interested in that situation because it's warm, it's hot, there you have fevers, so it's a nice and warm place, and the tissues are fragilized by the virus, so they'll go in and procreate. They'll reproduce and install themselves in your mucous membranes, and that's when it can become an infection, like a sinusitis or ear infection or throat infection or bronchitis or whatever.
What is, maybe you can tell our listeners, what is not a good food or habit to do?
What not to do when you're sick? What not
to do when to prevent a sinusitis, because I know sinusitis is very painful. Yeah. My husband had one, and it's...
Well, anything that will lower the immune system, like sugar and alcohol, are things that are gonna be sugar. I think like 1 teaspoon of white sugar will lower the efficiency of your immune system of 70% for
about 6 hours. I read once. But you mentioned alcohol. What is this business about having